forget about it. So I'm going to start recording right now. Welcome to the November 11th, 2014 LaSalle University Instructional Technology Management Masters of Science program, Lunchtime Learning. We have one more in the series this fall, and that will be in December. And we are going to be having a panel discussion on mobile. So mobile's hot these days, as you all know. Before I introduce our super speaker that we are very lucky to have with us, I saw that Joe is going to be out at the ATD Tech Fair in Las Vegas in early January. So if anybody's going to be out there, you might want to look him up. He can tell us a little bit more about that. But before we do that, I'd like to thank LaSalle University, who is responsible and makes this possible for us to do this. We've been doing it now for a little over 6.5 years. There are archives out on the website, lots of wonderful things that you can share. Joe said he has a handout for us today, so we will make sure that the link for the archive and any supporting materials are posted on the lasalle.edu/ITM website. So our program is unique. I'm going to shut off my video here, folks, so you don't have to be distracted. Our program is unique in that we work with corporate, organizational, and institutional learning. We don't do K-12. It's all about learning science, engineering. It's learning how to optimize learning environments and particularly how to use technologies to help people learn. I spent last week or week before last down at Sloan, what used to be SLO, which is now the online consortium in Elliott Macy's Learning 2014 in Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando. One of the things that surprised me is the rate of increase, how fast this field is picking up momentum, which is absolutely awesome. LaSalle is a private university, 150 years old, run by the Christian Brothers. It's a Catholic university. And the Lasallian philosophy believes that education should be of service, so that education should be useful. The Lasallians have 8 universities in the United States, 40 some worldwide, over 80 schools, counting their secondary schools. They've got a lot of Lasallian Academy, secondary, high school kind of schools, and they educate 1 million people. So it's an established university. It's been around for quite a while. We've been around for 6 years. The program is 100% online. That being said, we do have face-to-face get-togethers. If you are able to come, wonderful. We can try to bring you in with one of these synchronous technologies if you're in Chicago and you just can't make it to Philadelphia. Generally, what we need from you is we need an undergraduate transcript from an accredited school. We need a resume so that we can eliminate GMATs and GREs, and we need a couple letters of recommendation. You can apply online, and that's free. This is the general curriculum, and this too is available out there on the website for you. And many fields are into this, and more is being done with technologies. I am so happy to see it. It was like a decade we talked about mobile, and now we're doing it. It's wonderful. So there's tons of opportunities. Here's some of our faculty, all very well respected in the field. So these are the kind of jobs. We have had a wonderful track record with people getting jobs, moving up, moving over, and generally, finding that this is helping them succeed, which is really what it's all about. So you can complete an application if you're interested. If you have any questions, you can call me at any time. My numbers are out on the web, and you can always get me at baggio@lasalle.edu. So with that, we're right on schedule here. I would like to introduce you to Joe Ganci. Joe is the president of eLearning Joe, which is how I've known him. I've had the privilege of hearing him speak a few times, and it's always great. It's a consulting, training, e-learning consulting firm located in the Washington, D.C. area. Joe has been doing this a long time. He has won a ton of awards, and his latest one, I believe, was a guild master from the eLearning Guild. Am I right with that, Joe? With this, I would like to turn you over to eLearning Joe and our program for today. Joe, I'm making you presenter. Okay. There we go. All right, let me unmute you here.
Thank you. Finally, I've been trying to get you to unmute me because I was trying to talk and I obviously wasn't being heard. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I hope that you'll find this a real fruitful time together with me. I have the chat window up and running as well, so if you do have questions, you're welcome to ask them along the way. I will try to respond to them. I try to make this session so that it wouldn't be so busy that we'll end up taking every minute of the hour, so that I would be able to answer questions for you as well. Bobby, you may want to unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you. And I will proceed from here. So, if anyone is having trouble hearing me or seeing me, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue along. Okay, so and you do have a handout that's being posted to the website. So if you want a copy of this, you're welcome to have it, or you can just email me directly. I'm going to go ahead and place in the chat window my email address, just so that if you have any questions afterwards and you want to get hold of me, you may do that. So there is my email address. It's pretty easy, joe@elearningjoe.com. So let's talk about HTML5. Let's talk about mobile, and let's talk about how they're not exactly the same thing, and how, in fact, that you want to make sure that you distinguish these things in your heads. So when we talk about HTML5, what is HTML5? Well, it's really just a new version of HTML. HTML is the hypertext markup language. It's the ability to mark up text files so that they will be presented in different ways. And that's something that anyone who's ever worked in HTML knows full well. But of course, it's not just HTML, because just as in prior versions, HTML by itself is kind of not very powerful. HTML itself allows you to do some formatting and such. It allows you to do some linking, but it doesn't really get you to where you want to go when you want to make something that's more engaging. So HTML in the past has either used plugins like Flash, or it's used a combination of different technologies. So when we talk about HTML5, we're really talking about HTML. We're talking about CSS3. CSS are cascading style sheets, and they really are a way to help you to change the look and feel of a website without changing the contents. In other words, you don't have to get into the weeds. You can instead set up a style sheet, and you can change instantly what everything looks like on the screen. And then also JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is not a true programming language in that it's not compiled into machine language, but it is a scripting language, and so you find it directly placed inside HTML files or in their own .js files. JavaScript allows you to do a ton of stuff that you really could never do in HTML alone, nor in CSS, of course. So the three together is what's being considered. The image is cutting off at the bottom. Oh no. I am going full screen. Let me try just decreasing my screen resolution and see if that would help, because clearly I'm too high. Let's try bringing it down to 14. Let's try bringing it down to 1400 here and see if that does the trick. Okay, resetting my screen. Keep the changes. Click OK. Tell me, is it still being cut off at the bottom? You should be seeing my taskbar at the bottom. If you don't see that, let me know, okay? You still don't see it? Oh, well, I will try not to focus on the bottom of the screen then. I'm going to go back to my higher resolution because sadly it ends below sound. Below sound. Oh, right here. Wow. Really? That's really, really interesting. All right. I'll try one more thing because I certainly don't want to lose anybody here. If I go to, that's 1050. Let's try going to this resolution and apply that or okay that. Now this is not as high. So now I can't see anything below sound either. So hopefully you're seeing my taskbar now. We see the top of your taskbar. Good enough. That's close enough. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to our PowerPoint then, and we'll continue our presentation. So from the current slide. Okay, so we were talking about how these are three technologies that work together. How is HTML5 different? Why is it here now? Well, it does a number of things that HTML in the past could not do. And remember, when I say HTML now, I'm really referring to HTML, JavaScript, and CSS together. So yes, you can store things on a person's hard drive now, not without their permission, but you can. And that's especially true of mobile devices as well. You can have a lot more say over what kinds of fonts and such you have on the person's screen, because in the past you were very limited to what you could do. Usually you had 5 different heading styles and so on. Now you can actually specify fonts and such as well. You can have motion on the screen. You can have things being moving. Now wait a minute, Joe, isn't that what Flash was all about? Yep, and one of the reasons why HTML5 has become so popular is because Flash is on its way out. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. You can create games with it. You can have built-in audio and 3D and video. In the past, those kinds of media, as well as having motion, etc., all required plugins. You always had to find the right audio plugin, the right video plugin, etc. Especially a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, where everybody had their own video format, everybody had their own audio format. Well, HTML5 has said, hey, if you want to show video on the web, use MP4. If you want to show audio on the web, use these formats here. And now you don't have to have all those darn plugins all the time. So Flash versus HTML5, if you've been around for a while, you know that Flash has been around for a long time now, and it's almost dead. Almost. It's not quite dead yet, and I'll explain why in just a moment. HTML5 is alive, but here's the problem. When you look at we talk about HTML5 as if it's meant for just for mobile, but realistically, all modern browsers also use mobile devices as well, okay? I'm sorry, say that again. All modern browsers on desktops also have HTML5 capability, all the newer versions. Here's the thing you guys can try at home or at the office as well. Go to html5test.com. See that up there? Now here's an example. This is my browser right now. This is Chrome 38, which is I believe the latest version, running on Windows 8.1. As such, it's saying that my browser scores 512 points out of 555. What does that mean? Well, that's a pretty good score. I could go down this list and see everything that's supported and not supported in Chrome version 38. As you can see, most things are supported and a few things are not. Those things that are not supported are not necessarily that important to you. They may or may not be. If you're talking about e-learning, which is of course where I'm coming from, most of the things that are not supported are not things that you can do in authoring tools anyway, so no big deal. So that's Chrome. That's 512 points. If we look at Firefox, that has 477 points. Not too bad still. That's just a little more website or your e-learning works correctly on these different systems, on these different browsers. So if we're talking about HTML5, again, we're not just talking about mobile because your modern browsers can support mobile, support HTML5 as well, but to varying degrees. So that was Chrome, and this is Firefox. Let's take a look at IE. This is the latest version of IE 11, and it's down to 376. Now, that's actually the highest score they've ever gotten in IE, because if you look back at IE 8, and by the way, a lot of organizations are still using IE 8. They're slow to upgrade because it's always a major undertaking, right? Excuse me, I'm suffering from a little bronchitis, so if I cough or clear my throat, that's why. I apologize. 376 points out of 555, not too bad, but if you went to IE 8, the score in IE 8 was 42. 42, nowhere near is a good score for supporting HTML5. So that means that if you're trying to deliver learning or any kind of website to an organization that's using IE 8, they're not going to be able to see your HTML5 site. Instead, what are they using to be able to do all this? They're using Flash still. Flash still works on the older browsers. They still have the Flash plugin for those. And so the Flash plugin is what they're using still, just as we have been for years. And Bobby makes a good point. Who would have thought the Flash was going to die 6 or 7 years ago? Well, some of us had an inkling, but yeah. But now what we're seeing is that Flash is no longer even supported in newer browsers. Why? Because everybody's moving to HTML5. Okay, and we'll talk about that as to why in just a moment too. Finally, let's look at Safari. Safari is Apple's browser, and I'm running it in Windows, and it has a low of 260 points. And so again, that is going to be an issue on your desktop browsers, depending on which browser you're using, and more importantly, depending on which browsers that your learners or your viewers are using as well. Okay, so having said that, you can always go to html5test.com in any browser that you're using and test it out. You can test it out also on your mobile devices, and you'll find that these things here. And let's go on to here. So, oops, nope, not from the beginning. Let's go back down to here again. This is a little cartoon that I just love because it shows Chrome. This is 3 guys in a playground, right? 3 kids. Chrome is trying to wrestle Firefox to the ground while IE is off in a corner eating glue. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're seeing with the HTML5 support in the browsers, is that IE is really late to the game. Okay. Excuse me. In your handout, I also have these slides, and so you can see that there's some other sites that you can go to, such as the expressiveweb.com, and I'll show you that one real quick, because the expressiveweb.com is a really interesting place, and it's actually created by Adobe. Come on up. The Expressive Web is a really cool site where you can go and test different elements. Again, but in this case, it's showing you all the different features. If I come over here and choose if I do on video, it's now going to jump over to the video portion of this and show us a video playing on the screen. You know, using, and by the way, all these blocks are sort of like Lego type blocks. It's not really showing you what art can look like, because art, I'll show you in just a moment, can look beautiful in HTML5. But here's your video starting up over here, and it even gives you controls. You can play and pause. You can use the script here to change what your the video. If I go to animations, I'll just show you that one real quick, and then we'll stop this one. But this is a great site to go to because, for instance, with animations, once again, you're seeing that you have control over this. I can make the person jump higher, the blocky guy jump higher, so now he's jumping much higher than he was before. If I jump really high, you know, he's practically off the screen at that point. If I scroll down, I can then see that out of all the browsers out there at the moment, 53.9% of them are able to support these animations. So not ubiquitous, okay? You can also come down and see other examples down here below. The other thing I'd like to show you real quick is, and HTML5 Rocks is another really good site that you can go to check things out. This is a site that Disney has put together totally in HTML5 called Find Your Way to Oz. Now this takes just a moment to load, so I'll let it load up in front of you, but let me explain it meanwhile. That Find Your Way to Oz is a great site to show you just what HTML5 can do, because and my system's running very slowly right now because I have too many things open, but I have to show you everything. So bear with me while this opens up here. The whole point of this is that you are able to navigate through a 3D environment, and that you're able to try different things in this carnival type environment, the circus type environment, and then go from there. I'm going to let that continue for just a moment while I continue talking, and then I'm going to come back to it just as to not waste time. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint again and continue. All right, so when you're creating HTML5 and you're looking at tools in which to use HTML5, and that's really where we're spending most of our time today, you're really talking about power versus ease of use. Every tool does this. Every tool vendor has to decide how powerful they're going to make their tool versus how easy is it going to be to use. And so power versus ease of use, simply put, is referring to how many features does a tool offer you to allow you to create the very best kind of learning possible, for instance, so that your instructional design needs can be met, rather than trying to squeeze your instructional design needs into the limited features of a less powerful tool. Sometimes less powerful tools work great because your needs may not be that high, but other times when you really need to show something, such as, I don't know, heart surgery types of simulations, or software simulations, things like this, you know, you're not going to be able to go with the easy-to-use tools because they tend to be very much limited. So the challenge is looking at all the tools out there. So many times when you see them, they all look kind of similar, and yet if you had these tools in your toolbox, you wouldn't use them all interchangeably. They all have a specific purpose as well, and as such, you're not going to easily mix these up, okay? And the same thing should go with e-learning tools, because just because they look similar does not mean that they are the same at all. In fact, they can be drastically different under the hood, and that means you have to know how to use them. So are you going to go with a simple tool like a hammer? What does a hammer do? It just nails things, right? It just bangs things, and it also can claw nails out of wood, for instance. So it does two things pretty well. Okay. Or if you go with something that's full-featured, like this really crazy Swiss Army knife, where you have so many different features. These features of the tool doesn't mean you have to use all of them. You may just end up using the pocket knife here. But if you wanted to take full advantage of this, obviously if you're going to carry one like this around with you, it's probably because you want to take more advantage than just using the pocket knife. Well, then you want to take the time to learn each of these tools. It's not as simple as, it's a knife, I can cut things with it. Now I have to learn what each of these tools do. Each of these features of this tool does, in other words. Okay. So let's talk about PowerPoint tools. Now I'm going to break out of this for just a moment and go back to PowerPoint itself, because there are a lot of tools that are built into PowerPoint. Actually, let me go back to our Disney site and see if that's up and running now. It is, okay. So let's agree to Disney's draconian agreement here. And you can see all I'm doing is I'm not even clicking. I'm just using my mouse to meander around the screen. And I can go up to different booths and other things here. For instance, this music box or this photo booth, or and move around quite a bit. This is a beautiful, beautiful environment here that typically in the past could only have been done in Flash, but now we're using this HTML5 option here to go around and check out different elements as well. And you can interact with those different elements too. So I give you I suggest that you go to find your way to Oz.com, and again, it's in the handout, so you can take a look at it there, and try it out, because it's going to convince you, as nothing else, I think, currently, how much you can do with HTML5 that you could not do before without Flash. Okay, so as we come into any one of these booths, there are areas that we can click on, for instance, pictures in motion, and then that will take us into this section requires a webcam. Okay, well, I'm not using my webcam here. But anyway, it gets you the point. I'm going to close out of this right now. Okay, so in PowerPoint, as I was saying, you have a number of tools that can be built into PowerPoint. One that you may not be aware of is Microsoft's free download called Mix. Mix actually allows you to do a lot of things that you can't do in PowerPoint alone, and that in many ways takes the place of some of the more expensive tools out there. It doesn't do all of it though. So you can do some quizzing, you can do some screen recording, and you can bring in screenshots, and that's about it. There's no tracking or no progress tracking in here. There's no way you can put this into a SCORM environment, for instance, and so on. But for simple needs, it's certainly not bad because it's free. You have Adobe Presenter. Adobe Presenter, like most of these, will give you a ribbon in which you can then do things like, say, I want to insert a character on my screen, or I want to insert an interaction on my screen, and the interaction can be one of several that are built in. So you can do, certificates, for instance, like this one here, to give to a learner. You can have text, images, and audio that are separated into an accordion type of tabbing system. You can also have other organizational types of things, like a circle matrix, where you can click and see the innards versus the outer layers of something. You also have some gamings like hangman, jigsaw puzzles, etc. All of these are wizard-based and simple to use. And many of the PowerPoint tools now include these, as well as some of the installed tools as well. You can bring in scenes, you can bring videos, and you can bring in Flash if you wish, etc. But in the end, what's going to happen? We're going to come back to this in just a few minutes and compare how you can publish from these different areas. iSpring Suite 7 is very, very popular as well. And by the way, Adobe Presenter is typically, I believe, $500 for a license, but you can also license it on a subscription basis for $15 a month. So it's a pretty good deal. That's how I do it. $15 a month, and you get every new version of Adobe Presenter as well. iSpring Suite 7 is, in fact, another tool that does a lot of similar things, but it does some things a bit differently too. So you definitely want to consider iSpring 7 as one of your options. Over here on the right, we have Articulate. Articulate Studio 13 has been out now for a few months. It was Articulate Studio 09 before that, and it too does a lot of the similar kinds of options. It's a little more expensive. It's about $1,600, but it does have some really nice interactions and quizzing options and so on. Zenler Studio is another one that uses very similar types of ideas, and so on. So these are the 5 I have installed in my PowerPoint: Adobe Presenter, iSpring 7, Zenler Studio, Articulate, and also Mix. Now, if we take a look at how you would output from these things, right? Because when you do a PowerPoint, you can in essence give someone a copy of the PowerPoint and they wouldn't need necessarily PowerPoint. You can export, in other words here, to something where they would not need to have PowerPoint to see it. You package a presentation and so on. Now, a lot of people have PowerPoint, so it's not something we consider doing very often, but it is something that is possible. With these other tools, you do need to publish to some format. All of these tools are also SCORM compliant, except for Mix. All of these tools can have students' progress tracked as well, and you can then bring it up into a learning management system and so on. Each of these has publishing options. If we take a look at Adobe Presenter, you see that under Publish, you can publish just a SWF, which means you just publish a Flash version, or you can publish just HTML5, which means only HTML5, or you can publish to both. And what both does is it brings both of those together into one file, and then also gives you an additional HTML file that you can have everybody point to, whether they're on mobile or not. And it does a bit of a query thing going on where it checks to see what kind of device the learner is using, and it will in turn deliver the Flash or the HTML5 version to the person. So the cool thing about that is if you do publish to both, you will have the ability to accommodate everybody, because everybody's going to either get the HTML5 version or the Flash version. Okay, so that's nice. So that's what Adobe Presenter does. If we take a look at iSpring 7, iSpring 7 was the first of these tools to actually output to publish to HTML5. So when we go to Publish here, we'll see that in fact we have multiple options. We can go just HTML5. We can go to both. We can also create an executable file if that's something you need, etc. So all of the same similar options here, except also here you are able to go out to an exe file. If we look at Zenler Studio and go to Publish from here, again, you're going to see that you can go to HTML5 or to Flash, but not to both. Okay, so in this case, you get one or the other, but not both. And then finally, under Articulate, when you go to Publish from here, you'll see that you have similar options, except that in this case, Articulate does not allow you not to publish Flash. You have to publish the Flash version. But then, of course, you can also publish HTML5 as well. So having said that, in some ways it's advantageous, other ways it's not. So all of these have their up and downs. The reason why you don't have the option of turning off the Flash output is because you also have this option here to use the Articulate mobile player on the iPad. And that means that you can, the Flash version will actually run on your iPad. I didn't think I could run Flash on my iPad, Joe. Well, no, you can't. But what it does, this app, what it does is it converts the Flash to iPad machine code in real time. So it does, at the same time that you're watching it, it's converting it. So that's a really cool thing because of that. So it works pretty well. Okay, so these are all different options for PowerPoint add-in tools. They don't work on Mac, by the way, because PowerPoint on the Mac does not allow for these kinds of extensions to occur, but it's a Windows-only type of thing. Okay, so if there are any questions about PowerPoint add-in tools, please ask, otherwise I'm going to continue. Okay, so as we were talking about these different PowerPoint, I just covered a lot of those. Now we'll talk about some of the installation tools as well. So if we look at Adobe Captivate, for instance, when we're in Adobe Captivate, if I were to bring in a project into Adobe Captivate allows me to publish to different formats. And so it's a more powerful tool, of course. And let me open up something that is not what's called responsive design. I'll explain what that is as well. When I go to publish from here, same as I saw in Adobe Presenter, I can choose to publish to Swift or to HTML5 or to both. And again, when I do that, it's going to create a separate HTML file, which is the only file you really need to tell people about, because it will in turn show the HTML5 version or the Flash version depending on the person's device. Okay, so Captivate lets you do that. In addition, you can publish it to a PDF file, and in a moment I'll explain what responsive design is all about. That's really going to blow your mind if you haven't been playing with that as well. Okay, so responsive design is going to be very, very cool. Besides that, you have Storyline, and I have Storyline here, which is the new version of Storyline, and it has very similar options to your Articulate Presenter, Articulate Studio, wherein if I were to bring in let's see if I can open up one of these here. If I go to any file and then I go to Publish, when I publish, same options that you had with the Articulate Presenter you have here. Of course, Storyline is also much more powerful than Articulate Presenter. You can do a lot more with Storyline than you can in Articulate Presenter. Articulate Storyline is also about $1,600. Captivate is $800, but you can also get it for a subscription price for $20 a month, which is exactly what I do again, because it's a much better deal. Okay, so the two of these output to different publishing options, and they're all of these options now go to HTML5 or both. If any of you use Lectora, you'll also know that this is a really nice package. Ronnie has a question, how's the Articulate Player app? It's actually pretty good. I've been happy with the Articulate Player app. It works pretty well. I gotta mute my phone because it's whistling at me. The Articulate Player app is pretty cool. I like it a lot. It works very, very well for what I've thrown at it. The cool thing is, of course, that because there is actually a browser that you can use on your mobile devices, and it's called Puffin. I'll write it here, Puffin. Puffin is a browser that will let you, on a mobile device, look at almost any Flash-enabled site. So even on your iPad, you can go to a Flash-enabled site with Puffin. The issue, though, is that it's only going to be about 90 to 95% good. There are certain things that just won't work, okay? But still, hey, that's pretty good for a free browser, right? What we're doing with the Articulate mobile player, as well as other mobile players that you may find, is it doesn't have to worry about letting you see any Flash site, only a site that was built in Articulate Studio. So it knows itself, it knows what it can do and can't do, and so it's much better because it's much more focused on only what it needs to do, not on accommodating every Flash website out there. So there's that. Okay. You can, yes, thank you, Bobby, for saying that. You can also get student discounts on almost all these tools, student discounts and instructor discounts as well on all these different tools. Lectora is a great tool as well. I'm working on a Lectora project as we speak. It traditionally has not been a Flash product. It has always been an HTML5 output product. But as such, when Flash started to become not so important anymore, well, Lectora was one of the first out the gate to say, you don't need Flash to use us, and it was true, you didn't. But it wasn't HTML5, and it still isn't really HTML5. It is HTML, which means it's going to work on older browsers, newer browsers, etc., but it's not going to have as many possible features here either. Still in all, it's a really good tool that has a lot of good features in it, just that it hasn't taken full advantage yet of the HTML5 options. So, Flash versus HTML5, the reason, of course, when the iPad became so popular and iPhones as well, Steve Jobs said we're not going to allow Flash on these devices. Why? Because Flash had become a bit bloated. It had become a bit security problematic. It was allowing things to happen that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And so he didn't want to mess up, muddy the waters, and you'd be using your iPad and you'd go to a Flash site and suddenly your iPad would be, have a virus on it or something. It wasn't real common with Flash, but it was possible, and so Steve Jobs said, no, we're not going to let that happen. Of course, Adobe wasn't happy about that at the time, so there was a bit of a rift between them, and then Steve Jobs died, which is really sad, but I don't think Adobe had anything to do with it. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. On the other hand, Adobe saw the light, and they immediately started moving to HTML5 as well, and so even Flash now can output in many ways to HTML5. Flash itself, the tool Flash, and almost all of Adobe's tools now can output the HTML5 as well. So it is a given. Now, in the time we have remaining, I really want to focus on something that I think is most exciting of all, which is the idea of responsive design. Responsive design, you may have already experienced the responsive design quite a bit. If you go to a website, we'll take on my website here, for instance. This is my website right here. This is eLearning Joe. And if I were to take this eLearning Joe site and I were to look on a mobile phone, what will it look like? Well, as soon as I start to change the width of my file, you're going to see changes happen. So this would be sort of like the iPad view. You'll see that these two options at the top go away. These are nice to have options, but they're not necessarily that important. So here, it is go away with. Well, you'll see that once again things change. First of all, our buttons at the top now become much wider because they're easier to touch on a mobile phone. But also the elements that were on the side are now at the bottom here. So you can see exactly what it looks like. When you're talking about responsive design, knock me out as presenter. Bobby, are you there? Hello? What's going on? Bobby. Bobby. And I'm no longer presenting, am I? I'm no longer a presenter, so you need to make me a presenter again. I'm not sure why it kicked me out, but it did. Sorry.